So what is left now is the closing remark. And we have two closing remarks on the agenda, which is Onyekachi and Robert. And somebody has taken the remote control. Have you, Elvira, maybe? Ah, you changed the slide. Oh, thanks a lot. Okay, Robert, you want to take the lead? Maybe you want to take this one?
Thanks very much. I hate standing at these podiums, but and especially since the stage is so far from all of you, I think next time let's move the tables a bit closer. But I won't talk for long, and I think it's a measure of this conference's success that there's not that much left to say. I think it is worth saying thanks very much to ECHO and DRC and the rest of the DEMAC consortium, of Ford and the Berghoff Foundation, and the DEMAC project staff and their key collaborators. And this is not just polite ritual thanks. They saw an issue and an opportunity. They put money and resources into it, even though it was unconventional and a bit risky. They timed it perfectly in that they used the World Humanitarian Summit preparations as an accelerant and a platform. And here we are now, thanks to them, as well as thanks to some other leaders in this room. I think it's also worth thanking the government of Denmark and the people of Denmark. What Jette said earlier, with typical modesty, but it's extraordinary to think that a country of 5 million people is the 13th largest humanitarian aid donor in the world. That is to be acclaimed, and it's a standard that we all should aspire to. The fact that thousands of people from all around the world, from all sorts of organizations, networks, and communities went to this World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul a few months ago, I think really underscores the point that humanitarian risks, humanitarian response, are a concern and a responsibility for essentially all of society. I had a chance to say that before, but I think it's worth saying again. And it must continue being so, more so, as the risks and the crises and the challenges mount. Now, in the summit and in the publications and discussions before that, we heard a lot about this bad news, the mounting challenges and complexities. Even in the worst crises, a sense of hopelessness and futility about the ability of humanitarian actors to even meet a reasonable fragment of the basic needs, to say nothing of solving the underlying problems. So let's consciously for a moment focus on some good news and the growing role of diasporas in humanitarian action, the growing recognition by others of that role, and the fact that we are closing in on some means to strengthen that role, I think is very good news. OCHA, for its part, has committed to facilitating a more inclusive humanitarian system, or perhaps that will mean facilitating the role of actors who decide that they have greater effect by not joining the system. So I use the word system guardedly. We hear more and more this word ecosystem to describe the humanitarian collectivity. And I think that's an attempt to avoid the implications of the system, that it is exclusive, institutional, probably Western dominated, etc. So ecosystem is not a bad word. But I always like to think that there is such a thing as a productive managed ecosystem, like a nice organic garden. So maybe humanitarian action's going that way. Let's take the spirit of these very self-motivated actions, aid actions that we've heard about today, and the DEMAC project, and not sit around and let this engagement sort of evolve gradually on its own. It's urgent to close the humanitarian aid gap. This is an opportunity to help do so fairly fast. So let's force the pace a little and move ahead on this recognition and strengthening of diaspora's roles as fast as possible. Let's also work to scale. Successful micro-projects are important and necessary, but, as we heard from, I think Elhidid alluded to it, and so did Stuart just now, diaspora actions like emergency remittances are one of the very few things on the landscape that have the possibility, that are really large enough to change the equation and overcome the chronic insufficiency of humanitarian aid. There are other things there that are incremental, but this is a really big chunk that can overcome the chronic huge gaps. And that's why you definitely have our attention at the global level. So let's move fast ahead and get it done as soon as we've decided what it is exactly. Thanks.
The final words from our partners, both from the Danish Refugee Council and the Berghoff Foundation and Afford. We wanted to really thank you all for coming. We've had representatives here from the British government, from Swedish government, also appreciation to the Danish government as well for hosting us and for participating. We wanted to thank the members of the diaspora who have come out from Syria, from Somali, from Sierra Leone, the 3 S's as we've learned to call them. And also members of the international or the conventional actors as we call them, but some people don't like that, but the humanitarian, the traditional agencies who've come out to participate in this event. And the event has been really about what I think when we sat down to conceive what we wanted DEMAC to be about, was a place where all of us can come together to really try and work out ways that we can coordinate better and deliver on behalf of the many beneficiaries that we all want to impact. One of the things that has always kept me as a member of the diaspora going is a slogan that I've started to use, which is that there are probably about 245 million migrants and members of diasporas around the world. Each of those, according to the World Bank, is impacting 4.5 people in their countries of heritage and countries of origin. And they're doing that through about $500 billion in remittances. So the question I always ask is, if we're having that kind of impact, what more can we do if it was better coordinated? Are those who are trying to have impact with the people that we are engaged with also interested in perhaps increasing our efficiency? If we increase that efficiency by 10%, we're talking just in terms of financial flows, an additional 56 billion going into some of the poorest people in the world. If we increase the amount of skills, knowledge that we have through better coordination, if we increase our capacity to deliver, how much more can we do? And the challenge for ECHO, for some of our partners who are here, is how can you support us to do that? But it's not a one-way street. It's also about how we can support you to do the work that you're doing as well, because we have things to add. Over the last year and a half of this project, I've learned a lot about some of the challenges that you've faced over the years and the lessons that you've learned, and that's something that I think the diaspora sector itself wants to take on board, those lessons, so that we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel as we become more formalized, as we become more engaged, as we try and be more effective. But on our side, I think there are things that I hope over the last year and a half of engagement that the traditional sector has also taken on board from these encounters, and they've been really, really very rich. I think we created a safe space during the different sessions over there where people could talk frankly about some of the difficult issues that confront us all. So I'm hoping that in the next session, in the next phase of DEMAC, we will take on board a lot of the learning from this phase, all the issues that have been mentioned around, are we a bridge, and how do we implement, the issues around mentoring, the issues about the value added. Are we the missing link, or are we the added link? There are lots of things that have come out. How do we retain, each of us, our values and indeed expand those values so that they're more inclusive? What do we do in terms of the localization policies? And these are challenges I think we jointly face. And as Roger was saying, in terms of how we get this enhanced humanitarian system together, we jointly face those challenges, and I think we can solve them together. And we have begun a journey, which I think is really, really important. And I'm hoping that you stay with us for the next phase of DEMAC. A lot of people have talked about wanting a platform that is proactive, a platform that enables us to do the coordination much more effectively, a platform that will build the skills and capacity of the diaspora actors. And those are some of the things that we wish to do. In the next phase, we'll be facilitating diaspora operations in the field, particularly in areas of conflict, much more, so that we can see how that coordination works in real time on the ground. We'll also be helping to, we hope, train and create the framework for more peer-to-peer learning, so that we share each other's, our knowledge from each other. And we also want to facilitate additional working partnerships between the diaspora and conventional actors, so that we really embed some of the lessons that we've learned and take on board, obviously, the key issues that have been raised. And I've heard a lot of people today, again and again, talk about a space where they can go to if they want to connect with members of the diaspora and others, where they can learn, a space where there's an archive of information that has come out of the learning that we've had. And we are really hoping for the next phase that DEMAC, we're talking about the globalization of DEMAC, and where, again, as I said, people can go and find a platform where they can connect and learn much more about diaspora interventions and engagement. But I wanted to thank you all for coming. In Africa, we say when it rains that it's a blessing. So this morning we were not afraid, and everybody came out very early, and despite the weather, but it was a true blessing, and it's been a pleasure to be here. And I wanted to thank two other people before we leave. I wanted to thank three groups of people before we leave. One was all the people who have contributed and made excellent presentations. Secondly, our host for the day, who has steered us through. If you please give him a big hand of applause, very excellently. And also the UN for hosting us today. And this is the right place to have these conversations, and we were glad that they were able to facilitate that for us. But please, if you can give yourselves the final round of applause for a really spirited and engaged day of activities. I know everybody's exhausted, but I think we put in some good work today. So thank you very much.